Well, ladies and gentlemen, fellow UKIPers, I think this has been the most invigorating and inspiring conference that has happened in all the years that I have been in UKIP, inside the hall at least. Of course, there have been a few squibs and squalls outside the hall, but that isn't going to affect us in any material degree, because I am a monument to political survival in myself. And UKIP is going to do more than survive in the years ahead. We are going to surge forward to greater and greater success, because what we have to remember, as Winston Churchill pointed out when he was a young man, that politics is far more exciting than war, because in politics you can be killed many times. And UKIP's great strength, of course, is that we are not a political construct of the media classes, as the other parties have now become, but we are a spontaneous grassroots movement, an explosion of outrage, what I might call a peasants' revolt. And actually that's our great strength, because we come from the people, we represent the people, we connect with the people in a way that the other classes no longer do, because they live inside the Westminster bubble. Now, I have a role to perform as your Deputy Chairman in the next year, because I have been charged with the responsibility of delivering the great win that we're going to have on the 22nd of May next year in the European Parliament elections, and indeed the local government elections, which are held on the same day. Now, other parties have people in this role as well, and the Conservatives have Linton Crosby. Well, I'm going to be UKIP's Linton Crosby, but without the dirty tricks. New Labour had Peter Mandelson. Well, I'm going to be your Peter Mandelson, but without the lies. And the Liberals had, of course, Lord Reynard. Well, now there's a hands-on politician for you, if ever there was one. At least if you had the misfortune to be nubile and blonde and 18 years old. So I'm going to be Lord Reynard for UKIP without the groping. But there you are. Now, we start, I think, from an extremely strong position to start with, because the latest YouGov poll on voting intentions for May next year puts UKIP on 30%, Labour on 25%, the Conservatives on 18%, the Liberals on 8%, and the Greens on 7%. But we're not satisfied with 30%, are we, ladies and gentlemen? We must take that on up to 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 to 100%. No. Now, let's just reflect for a moment upon how fantastic an achievement it is that in a national election, UKIP, a party which, as we know, was founded just 20 years ago, is now leading all the other political parties in this country by a substantial margin. And in the course of the next 9 months campaigning, we will extend that even further. But of course, as we know, Eastleigh changed everybody's perceptions of UKIP, because we came within an ace of winning that seat. And we had Rotherham, where the UKIP candidate, a very different kind of constituency, Jane Collins there, Diane James in Eastleigh, both came within an ace of winning their seats. Because once people believe that UKIP can win, then we will win. And if we win a national election, as we shall do on the 22nd of May next year, that will completely revolutionise the political landscape of this country. Now, you know, although we came second in Eastleigh, second in Rotherham, and we've come second up and down the country, both in parliamentary elections and council elections, times without number in the last 12 months, if you add together the votes in Eastleigh and Rotherham, we actually got more votes than either the Labour candidates, the Tory candidates, the Liberal candidates, or anybody else. We actually would have won those elections if they had been a combined seat. So this is the goal that we have for May next year, is to translate the nearly won into a massive win, which is going to deliver our victory, not just in the European Parliament elections and the Council elections, but also in the general election in 2015. Now, so what's going to be our strategy to win that election in May next year? And we're going to win, and not only are we going to win, but we're going to win big. Well, to start with, this isn't any longer a debate in this country between left, right and centre. It's a debate between right and wrong. And UKIP is right and all the others are wrong. The fight on the 22nd of May next year is between UKIP and the rest, because the Lib Lab Con are merely reflections of the same thing. And the choice that they presented to this country in the last generation is an entirely false one, which is why UKIP has completely undermined their political position. Because they all agree with each other on the things that matter in normal people's lives, and only UKIP disagrees with them, whether it's EU membership, open-door immigration, grammar schools, green taxes that consume now 12% of people's electricity bills, poor people putting money into the pockets of multimillionaire landowners. There's a great election slogan for you, isn't there, if you're a Lib Lab Con candidate in the next elections. £20 billion a day in overseas aid, political correctness, all the other things that so outrage the people of this country. Only UKIP is standing up for the interests of ordinary people. So vote Lib Lab Con, you don't get a change of government, all you do is get a change of management. Now, I don't know whether you were interested in minority pursuits. You might have watched the Liberal conference over the last few days. Nick Clegg, in a resounding speech, said this: genuine democratic choice starts and finishes with the wishes of the public, not the preferences of the political classes. Well, that, of course, is exactly what we believe in. It's a pity that he doesn't, because when he and David Cameron teamed up as Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister in 2010, their very first act, of course, was to tear up the most important promises that they had made only a few days before in the general election campaign when they were fighting each other. You know, for example, the Tories campaigned in 2010 to scrap the Human Rights Act. They didn't actually deliver on that. They never intended to. The Liberal Democrats campaigned on opposing tuition fees for students. That was immediately reneged upon afterwards. And the coalition agreement was actually all about the drawing up of a political programme upon which nobody had voted. So it was an agreement between the political classes of this country to betray the people of this country. Not least, of course, we saw it recently on Syria, where the opinion polls showed us that 92% of the people of this country were opposed to Britain's military intervention in Syria. 92%. But still, they tried to bulldoze that through. And if it hadn't been for UKIP changing the political realities on intervention in the Middle East, that policy would have gone through and we would have intervened in the most disastrous way. So much for the paramount wishes of the public that Mr. Clegg was talking about last week. But of course, in Clegg's utopia, the electorate is reduced simply to choosing which party should join the Liberal Democrats in government. The 8% is actually controlling the 100%. So the first thing is to show that UKIP is the only party that offers a real choice. The second element in our electoral strategy is, of course, Nigel Farage. Now, he is the only leader of a political party in this country ever to have had a proper job amongst the current holders of that title. He connects with ordinary people because he's not a stultified construct of the spin culture that controls everything else in political life. Cometh the hour, cometh the man. And we've seen over the last 2 days what he, as a charismatic political leader who is able to articulate the thoughts and hopes and aspirations of ordinary people, can deliver. You know, Labour has betrayed the working classes. The coalition has destroyed the Liberals' unique selling point as the party of protest. UKIP can unite the entire nation in a way that these artificial constructs can't. Now, of course, it's not only the political classes that don't understand what's going on in this country. The media classes, sadly, don't either. And we've seen that over the last few days, where they've concentrated entirely upon the trivialities at the expense of the realities of what really matters to this country. And, Channel 4 started it off at the beginning of this conference by focusing upon a letter which a former teacher at Nigel Farage's school had written 30 years ago about his supposed political opinions. Now, if we all focus upon what we did or said as 17-year-olds, even if it was true, we might not necessarily find that to our advantage. And I've done a little bit of research into what Mr. Michael Crick did when he was 17 years old. He was the Labour Party election agent for an extreme left-wing Labour Party candidate to the Manchester City Council, a man called Gerry Collier, who is actually also now an hereditary peer, Lord Monkswell. And I think in the interest of transparency, we really ought to know what are the political antecedents of the journalists who now purport to be independent political commentators. Now, it may be that he's grown up. Who knows? All I can tell you is Nigel Farage has certainly grown up. And he's so grown up that he is not only qualified to be the leader of this country, but we are halfway to getting there. Yeah. And on May the 22nd next year, when we, by a very substantial margin, return more MEPs to the European Parliament than any of the other parties who are contesting that election, and when we win hundreds and hundreds of seats in the council elections up and down this country, in the Tory shires, in the metropolitan areas, we are going to effect the greatest political earthquake that this country has seen in my lifetime. And I want you, every single one of you, to be part of that campaign. It won't happen unless we get out there and do it. So it's shoulders to the wheel, noses to the grindstone. Let's go forward to victory.